Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm your anchor, and this is a special report. Tonight, the Middle East stands at a crossroads, scarred by fire, fractured by diplomacy, and drowning in a humanitarian catastrophe that is now entering its 22nd day. The United States and Israel's joint military campaign against Iran, codenamed Operation Epic Fury, which began on the morning of February 28th, has fundamentally reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the entire region, and its shockwaves are being felt from the gas pumps of suburban America to the ancient streets of Tehran. We begin tonight with the very latest on the ground. 22 days ago, the United States and Israel launched what military analysts are calling the most coordinated and devastating joint military operation since the Second World War. Nearly 900 strikes in the first 12 hours alone targeted Iran's missile infrastructure, air defense systems, naval fleet, and, most dramatically, its top political and military leadership. The opening salvo took out the very heart of the Iranian regime. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed in those first strikes, a seismic development that triggered a torrent of hundreds of retaliatory missiles and thousands of drones from Iran, raining down across the Middle East. Since that first night, the conflict has not paused for a single hour. U.S. forces have struck more than 7,000 targets in Iran since February 28, according to U.S. Central Command, which oversees U.S. forces in the region. Al Jazeera, and yet, Iran has not gone quiet. Far from it. The Iranian armed forces have now announced their 70th wave of attacks, launching missiles and drones towards Israel and U.S. bases across the Gulf. Al Jazeera Iran is playing the long game, rationing its weapons strategically, adapting, and retaliating. It is a war that was supposed to be short. It is not. Tonight, on day 22, fresh explosions have rocked Tehran and the surrounding areas even as millions of Iranians mark Eid al-Fitr and celebrate Nowruz, the Persian New Year, under the shadow of airstrikes. Now, let us talk about people, because behind every statistic is a human being. More than 18,000 Iranian civilians have been injured, and at least 204 children have been killed in Iran since the war began. The overall death toll inside Iran has surpassed 1,400. In Lebanon, the death toll has climbed past 1,000. 15 Israelis and 13 U.S. military service members have been killed across the region. Millions of people in Lebanon and Iran have been uprooted from their homes. A fifth of Lebanon's entire population has been displaced in just 2 weeks, according to a United Nations Refugee Agency official, leaving families desperately scrambling for shelter. And on this holy day of Eid, there is a pain that goes beyond the physical. Thousands of Iranian worshippers gathered at Tehran's Grand Mosque for Eid al-Fitr prayers, holding funeral services alongside celebrations. One worshipper said, and these are his words, that it felt deeply painful to pray in the absence of the supreme leader, who was killed in the very first days of the war. NBC New York. Meanwhile, Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem remained closed on this Eid Friday, the first time since 1967 that the holy site has been shut during the celebration. Israeli authorities closed the mosque at the start of the war, depriving Palestinians of the chance to worship at one of Islam's holiest sites. Here in Washington, the messaging from the White House is confusing, to say the least. President Trump announced on social media Friday that the U.S. is considering winding down military efforts in the Middle East. The comment sent markets briefly upward, and then crashed them right back down when officials confirmed something very different. Even as Trump floated the idea of scaling back, the United States announced it was sending more warships and additional Marines to the region. A senior Iranian source told CNN that Tehran does not believe Trump's claim, dismissing the president's comments as, quote, Trump's psychological operations to control the markets. And from Israel, a very different signal. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said Saturday that attacks against Iran will increase significantly in the coming week. So, is this war winding down? The answer tonight, from every front, every military analyst, every diplomat, is no. Trump also made global headlines this week when he invoked the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor during a summit with Japanese Prime Minister Sonai Takaichi, using it to defend the element of surprise in the Iran attack. The moment caused surprise, embarrassment, and deep unease across Japan. And on NATO, the president was blunt. Trump called NATO allies cowards for not helping the U.S. secure the Strait of Hormuz, saying, NATO could help us, but they so far haven't had the courage to do so. If the war feels distant from American living rooms, the gas pump is bringing it home. Crude oil prices have now topped $110 per barrel, a nearly 45% increase since the war began. Goldman Sachs has warned that these elevated prices could last through 2027. The reason? The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas typically flows, is effectively shut down. The United Nations Maritime Organization has announced it will begin negotiating with countries to establish a humanitarian corridor to free around 20,000 seafarers stranded in the Gulf. The UK has also sent military planners to work on a viable collective plan to reopen this vital waterway. In a remarkable and contradictory move, the Trump administration temporarily lifted sanctions on 140 million barrels of Iranian oil already loaded on ships, even as the U.S. is actively at war with Iran, in a desperate attempt to ease surging fuel prices. The International Energy Agency is urging people to work from home and avoid air travel. IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol warned that the war is creating the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market, and that without a swift resolution, impacts could become more and more severe. And then there is the money. Trump may soon ask Congress for as much as $200 billion to keep funding the war, a sum his administration has described as a small price to pay. Perhaps the most alarming development of the past 24 hours came from Iran's Natanz nuclear facility. Iran confirmed Saturday that its Natanz nuclear enrichment site had been struck in an airstrike, but stated there has been no radiation leakage from the complex. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova called these strikes a brazen violation of international law, warning they posed a real risk of catastrophic disaster throughout the Middle East. The Natanz facility had already been targeted in the first week of the war. The UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, had previously confirmed that no radiological consequences were expected from those earlier strikes. But the repeated targeting of nuclear infrastructure is alarming scientists and international observers worldwide. Just one day before the war began, Oman's foreign minister had announced a breakthrough, saying Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium and a full IAEA verification. He said peace was within reach. Talks were expected to resume on March 2nd. They never did. 3 weeks ago, the world woke up to a war that many thought would last days. Tonight, as missiles arc over Tel Aviv, as fires burn at Kuwait's Mina al-Amadi refinery, as millions of displaced families mark Eid without homes, and as diplomats scramble behind closed doors, it is clear that this conflict has no easy exit ramp. The 2026 Iran war has disrupted global travel and trade, halted flights in and out of the Middle East, and led to massive shipping reroutes to avoid the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea. The question being asked in every capital tonight is not who is winning. It is how does this end? That answer remains, as of tonight, deeply uncertain. We will continue to bring you live updates throughout the evening. I'm your anchor. Stay informed, stay safe, and we will be right back.